They said I talked too much, asked too many questions, that I should just be grateful to even be in a room. He never looked up when I spoke, never listened. He just waved me off like background noise. But I wasn't noise. I was listening, learning, storing every lesson they didn't want to teach me. And while they sharpened their egos, I sharpened my purpose. It wasn't failure. It was foundation. I disappeared quietly. And when I came back, I was the one with the key. I'm Danielle Carter. I'm 29 years old. And I live in Austin, Texas. This is how the man who dismissed me ended up knocking on my office door, asking for a job. I was the overachiever, the one who color-coded her notebooks, graduated summa cum laude, and landed an entry-level position at one of the top consulting firms in Dallas before I even turned 24. Everyone expected me to soar. You'll be running the place in 5 years, my uncle told me at my graduation party. My mom bragged to anyone who'd listen. She's the smart one in the family. And for a while, I believed them. But the corporate world has a way of shrinking you if you don't fit into its pre-cut mold. I was too eager, too curious, too outspoken. I asked why when they wanted yes. And no one hated that more than him, Brad Whitaker. He was a senior manager. Smooth, respected, untouchable. I sat across from him in meetings where I'd raise a question, and he'd smirk like I was a toddler interrupting grown-ups. You'll understand when you've got a few years under your belt, he'd say. Try listening instead of talking. At first, I tried to prove myself. Stayed late. Took extra projects. Stayed silent. But it didn't matter. By the end of the year, I was burnt out, emotionally flatlined, and passed over for a promotion I trained someone else to do. She's just taking a break, my mom whispered to her friends. We don't talk about that anymore, my aunt said when someone asked how work was going. They thought I'd failed. And maybe I had by their standards. But while the world moved on without me, I started over. Quietly. So quietly that not even he noticed. After I left the firm, I moved back into my tiny apartment on the east side of Austin. No big announcement. No plan. Just exhaustion and a few months of savings. I applied for jobs I wasn't excited about. Temp agencies, admin work, online gigs. Anything that would help me stay afloat without putting me back into a room full of Brads. Then one day, I saw a post on a neighborhood forum, looking for someone to help my mom learn how to use Zoom. I didn't think much of it. $50 for an hour? Why not? Her name was Mrs. Calloway. 83. Fierce. Funny. Terrified of her laptop. This machine hates me, she muttered as I walked her through the basics. No ma'am, I laughed. You just haven't made peace with the keyboard yet. Week after week, more seniors booked me. Then churches called. Then libraries. Then retirement communities. Before I knew it, I was teaching 10 classes a week on everything from FaceTime to online banking. And I was building something I never planned. Connection. One afternoon, Mrs. Calloway stayed behind after class. She looked at me with watery eyes and said, Because of you, I saw my grandson's wedding on an iPad. You brought my baby into my living room. That stuck. I stopped calling it a side hustle. I built the website, filed an LLC, named it Silver Circuit, bought 3 folding tables and some extension cords. And I started knocking on doors, community centers, senior homes, city programs. It was nothing flashy. No venture capital, no social media hype. Just folding chairs, patient smiles, and people hungry to feel less invisible. And for the first time in a long time, I felt useful. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. Silver Circuit started small, just me, my laptop, and a few printed flyers. But within a year, it wasn't small anymore. We were onboarding over 1,200 seniors per month across Texas. I hired instructors, patient, tech-savvy, kind souls, trained them myself. Our lesson kits became so effective that some clinics and nonprofits started using them as standard onboarding material. I signed a deal with a regional bank to teach elderly clients about online safety. Our team's average email open rate was 78%, higher than what I used to see at the consulting firm, and we were dealing with people who once thought a mouse was an actual rodent. I developed an app, Simple UI, large fonts, voice-guided instructions. It didn't go viral, but it changed lives. We expanded into New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. By year 3, Silver Circuit had trained over 40,000 seniors, and we'd been invited to present at the National Digital Inclusion Conference. But at family dinners, I was still figuring it out. Teaching old folks to click buttons? Real noble work, my cousin Brian joked once, reaching across me for another roll. My mom smiled but didn't correct him. She's always been the free spirit, she added, like I was chasing butterflies instead of building a multi-state digital education company. At Christmas, my brother Jake pulled me aside. Why don't you just get a real job again? You're too smart for this nonprofit stuff. I just smiled. They didn't see it. Or maybe they didn't want to. But I did. I saw the handwritten thank you notes from a woman in Amarillo who used our tablet class to order her heart medication for the first time. I saw the Zoom screenshot of 20 grinning grandfathers watching their grandkids open presents from halfway across the country. I saw purpose, plain, humble, and undeniably mine. There was no viral moment. No profile in Forbes. But we kept growing. And I kept showing up. Sometimes at night, when the office was quiet and my instructors had gone home, I'd sit in the back and just watch the feedback forms come in. Scrawled notes in shaky handwriting. Smiley faces. Little messages like, I feel human again. My kids look at me differently now. But not once did anyone in my family ask me what Silver Circuit was. I wasn't angry, just invisible. The girl who left her fancy job and never quite returned. They didn't know, but he would. And not in the way he expected. It was a Monday morning, the kind where the coffee machine sputtered, and the air still smelled like weekend rain. I was reviewing applications for a newly opened Director of Operations role at Silver Circuit HQ. My assistant, Clara, buzzed in. There's a walk-in asking to speak with the hiring manager. He says it's urgent but polite. I sighed. We didn't usually do walk-ins. Still, something nudged me to say, send him in. And in walked Brad Whitaker. Yes, that Brad. Same squared jaw, same smug gait. A little more salt in his hair, a little less fire in his eyes. He didn't recognize me at first. Not surprising. Back then, I was just a girl behind a laptop, drowning in analytics decks no one read. He walked up, confident like always. Good morning, Brad Whitaker. I'm here about the director position. I nodded slowly. He extended a firm hand. I didn't take it. Danielle Carter, I said, holding eye contact. Something flickered in his face. Confusion, then awkward pause. He forced a chuckle. Wait, Danielle? From Wilcox and Marin. I gave him a tight smile. Didn't think I'd remember how to just listen, huh? There was silence. Thick, uncomfortable silence. He cleared his throat. Well, small world. Looks like we've both come a long way. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Let's hear what brings you here, Brad. He launched into his pitch. Talked about his experience. His pivot into nonprofit tech. His passion for impactful work. Buzzwords. So many buzzwords. But then he said something that made me sit up. He reached into his worn leather folder and pulled out a folded printout. I've been researching your company, Silver Circuit. I didn't know about it until my sister's fiancé told me a story I couldn't shake. I kept my face still. He unfolded the page, an email from a woman named Mara Tisdale. She said your program helped her dad, who's recovering from a stroke, learn to FaceTime. She said the first time he called her was the first time he'd seen her baby girl smile. He looked at me now, his voice softening. She said he cried. That he watches her daughter every morning now like a ritual. That your platform gave them a second chance at family. I just nodded, saying nothing. Brad leaned back, setting the page down like it was fragile. I want to be part of that. I studied him, not because I was angry, but because I wondered, when had he lost whatever made him human the first time around? You know, I said slowly, you once told me I needed to earn the right to ask questions. His eyes dropped. And now here you are, asking me for a place at the table. He tried to respond, but I wasn't finished. Silver Circuit wasn't built for recognition. It was built for people like Mara's dad. For people who didn't grow up with a keyboard in their hands. For people you and I once dismissed. His mouth opened, then closed again. He nodded. There was no begging. No defense. Just quiet realization. I stood, offering my hand now, not as an employee, but as a leader. As much as I appreciate your interest, Brad, I don't think this is the right fit. He took my hand, finally registering the moment. Not because I demanded attention, but because the truth walked in by itself and refused to stay quiet. He left without saying much. No grand exit. Just the sound of one man, finally hearing what he never listened to before. A week after Brad walked out of my office, I received a card in the mail. No return address. Just a soft cream envelope with delicate handwriting. Inside was a note from my mom. No dramatic apologies.
Just a simple line.
Your grandmother would have been proud of what you're building. She didn't say she was proud.
But I didn't need her to.
A month later, my brother Jake sent me a text. Saw Silver Circuit featured in AARP Weekly. That's actually kinda huge.
Congrats.
No emoji. No extra words. But again, I didn't need them. Respect doesn't always come in thunder. Sometimes it arrives in raindrops. At Thanksgiving that year, no one asked when I'd go back to corporate. Instead, my aunt asked if I could help her husband set up online grocery orders. I showed him how to zoom in on text, how to use voice search. He laughed when he finally got it. And I laughed too. Not because they finally saw me, but because it didn't matter anymore. I had already seen myself. For a long time, I'd measured success by how others responded to me, how they clapped, praised, or promoted. Now I measured it by the quiet victories. An old woman FaceTiming her sister in Arizona. A veteran learning to book medical appointments online. A handwritten note taped to our office fridge. Thank you for making me feel like I wasn't born too late. I never printed the card for my mom. I just kept it folded between the pages of my planning journal. A reminder, not a trophy. It wasn't pride. It was peace. And peace doesn't ask for attention. It just arrives. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever asked questions no one wanted to answer, this story was for you. Because being overlooked doesn't mean you're wrong. It means your light is still warming up. And sometimes, the world isn't ready for your rise. But rise anyway. I used to think I had to shout to be heard. Now I know. You just have to speak the truth and wait long enough for the echoes to return. Wherever you're watching from, I want you to know. Your quiet victories matter. Your work, even if no one claps for it, is not wasted. Your story, even in its silence, is still speaking. Tell me your story. Drop a comment. Not for the algorithm, but because someone else out there needs to hear that they're not alone. We don't build empires here. We build bridges. One moment of connection at a time. Thank you for being part of this one. And if no one's told you lately, you're doing better than you think. And I'm so glad you're here.